Let's talk about how you joined the Milwaukee Admirals.
I was selling tires. Phil Whitliff came in. So I sold him a set of I think B75 R13. Phil's kind of a cheap guy, so he bought the double plies instead of the radials. I said, hey, if you ever want a job selling season tickets, shoot me a call. And it was kind of something I'd always wanted to do. So I took a little bit of a pay cut and started selling season tickets with the Admirals.
Did you think that it would last this long?
No, never. But I tell you what, it's been phenomenal. I've been lucky enough to work for, the Pettitts, lucky enough to work for John and Harris, and I tell you what, it's just been a labor of love, and it's just been a great ride. It really has. It's been just a lot of fun.
And you joined the club at really the first heyday of those teams. The success was on the ice was second to none. Until the finals, I guess. Really.
The goal scoring. It was. They say that teams kind of like, mimic their coaches, or they're a product of their coaches. And Phil loved the offense, and boy, we went up and down the ice with the best of them and scored a lot of goals. Had a lot of fun. I had some dynamic players. Watching guys like Dale Yakachek and Daniel LaCour, and it was hard not to get excited about the team back then. And then we ran into some issues in the finals. A guy named Claude Noel and Dirk Graham and some other pretty good hockey players in Toledo.
On those teams, and you mentioned Phil liked to play offense, was that just because that's who he was, or did he seems keenly aware of what's going on around him? Did he understand that that's what sold tickets?
Well, I think that, Phil was always big on the, way ahead of his time on the promotional side. Always, loved the offensive game, knew it well. When we signed Blake Jeffrey on, when they said, boy, nobody's got as many garbage goals as Blake Jeffrey on, we're playing, and that, people take that as a negative term. And Phil Whitliff scored more goals, like flat on his rear end, poking at the puck and getting in traffic and rebounds and everything in front of the goal than Phil Whitliff in his day, and was a good hockey player, and understood what it took. And when he was putting the depth chart together, he wanted to be surrounded with some guys that could put some snipers, and the Yves Prestons and the Danny LaCours and the Dale Yakacheks, Johnny Flesches, or Cal Roadhouse, great hockey players, and all could put the puck in the net.
How much did you know about the Admirals before you decided to take the flyer and take the pay cut and come over here?
I used to come
to a lot of games.
I used to go to a bunch of games at the old Mecca and enjoyed them, and really kind of thought it was. I thought maybe I could help out on the promotion side and do some things and sell some tickets, and I was successful.
Promotion side. What were the promotions then, and when did the popular concert start?
Well, we didn't do a lot of promotions. A big night was the paper airplane toss. The Pettitts didn't like a lot of the commercialism. We had some sponsors, we had some giveaways. But Lloyd was a purist, and we were the last team in hockey to sell dashboards. Last team in hockey. We would come in, and the other teams would come in and just be amazed that our dashers were just beautiful whiteboards all the way around, and they were purists. One time, we did a small Applebee's promotion, and we had a little apple and a bee skating on our ice right before the teams came out. And I got a phone call from Lloyd at the time saying, "What the heck is that apple and bee doing on my rink?" And I said, "Well, Applebee's is giving us a little bit of money to have an apple and a bee on our rink, and He goes, "Give them their money back. I don't want an apple and a bee on my rink." So it was interesting. Yeah, it was just But then we kind of came into our own and started doing some concerts and doing some things. The first year of the Bradley Center, blood, sweat, and tears. David Clayton Thomas. What goes up must come down. Spinning wheel, baby, got to go round. It was a wonderful first attempt. It was a reasonably priced artist. We got the logistics out of the way. The Bradley Center was phenomenal in figuring out how they were going to do it, and it was really just kind of a test at that point. And then we started going with concerts and other things. Amazingly, a lot of promotions we did at the old Mecca didn't transform very well to the Bradley Center. Paper airplane toss was one that we did, and it was very popular. And never did a plane go on the ice prematurely at the Mecca. We came to the Bradley Center. We tried it for probably 3-4 games. The fourth game, there was a terrible call against us. Derek Martin made a terrible call. We were down by 1 and he made the call with like 7 seconds left, and there were paper airplanes all over the ice. All over the ice. Again, Mr. Pettit met me in the office and said, "I don't think we'll ever be doing that promotion again." And I agreed with him, but it was weird because it's funny how the crowd, as well behaved as they were at the old Mecca, were a little bit. The numbers were bigger though. The numbers were much bigger, and there were a lot more people coming to the games.
And there was a lot of people, I'm assuming, at that time curious about the new building, so they came to a hockey game, and it was a lot of people that weren't the regulars over the last 5-6 years, right?
And the plane folded just perfectly because they had lines on exactly how to fold the paper airplane, so people got to learn how to do it, and they were just sailing all over the place. So.
Before you got to the Bradley Center, though, there was one year that goes down as the worst year on ice in Admirals history. What was it like to pack up? Where was the office first off, and did you have to pack up and move every game down to Wilson Park?
Yeah, we were at. I'm just trying to remember. I think we were at 320 East Michigan at the time in the McGill building, and we were getting ready to go to the move to the Bradley Center. Obviously, the next year, and it was time for us to ask the Wisconsin Center District for dates, and that wasn't the Wisconsin Center District at the time, but it was the Mecca, and they gave us a bunch of terrible dates. So we were going, wow, geez, we could either average 1,000 or 2,000 people a night at the Mecca and pay a lot of money in rent, or we could move our games over to Wilson Park for a year while we're waiting for the building to be done. So the decision was made to refurbish Wilson Park, and then Lloyd and Jane Pettitts put a bunch of money in, sat down with Dave Schultz, who was the county executive at the time, and refurbished Wilson Park, brought a lot of paint job and fixed it up with some new bleachers, and it looked real nice, and we played our home games there for a year. It was, we lost a lot of games. The worst part of that year was the accident that Phil and Howie got into, and we were kind of like the unguided ship at that point. It really was tough. I mean, when you're losing 8-9 games in a row, and the guy who would make the moves to maybe try to help that or would help guide the coach, or the coach had, Kevin Willison was kind of out there all on an island by himself because the guy who you'd ask for help was, had tubes in to help him breathe for a while. So it was awfully tough. It was really tough. I mean, you lose a lot of games, lost a lot of games in a row. But it was a fun atmosphere, and it was kind of funny because we were almost a hot ticket. I mean, once the losing streak got to be, a little bit, people were kind of, we're going to go see if we can break it tonight. But we sold out 37 to 41 games, and people had to make plans to go to a game in advance, which when you look at it in hindsight is probably a pretty good thing because supply and demand. And next year we got into a new building, and people had to make their plans to go to see Admiral hockey. Maybe they thought ahead of time and came down.
With Mr. and Mrs. Pettit, who was Lloyd here every day? I mean, Lloyd was the hands-on.
No, and neither one of them were here.
Okay.
No, I would go out, or Phil would go out, or you'd go out checks for expenses. Every 2 weeks, you'd go out to their house. Our accountant would put all the checks in an envelope, go out to their house, and Lloyd, while watching soaps, Lloyd would sign all the checks. And you sit there, and Lloyd would comment, and we'd throw some banter back and forth, and it was just really nice to get to know them. They were wonderful people, just delightful people to know.
When this, boom, let's say, in the IHL in the mid-'90s, early to mid-'90s, and it started expanding everywhere in San Francisco and all of this, it really was as close to the NHL as you could get without being in the NHL, wasn't it? Or were the boys always traveling like it was an NHL club? Were they treated like it was an NHL club?
Treated like royalty. Yeah. They were always treated like royalty. The Pettitts did a wonderful job. Always a first class, a lot like it is today. Just everything was done first class, and it was very nice. It was a real nice environment for everyone. It was, it was interesting in the cities because you always kind of kept in the back of your mind that it was kind of we'd sit at league meetings and it would be like, we're in the same, our financial numbers look the same as the NBA's back in the mid-'70s, and we could expand to Europe, and we could do that, and we can do this, and it's like, whoa. It was kind of, the league was kind of off on a tangent, and there were a lot of guys looking out for number one, and you knew there, somewhere along the line there was going to be kind of a come to Jesus, and with everyone, there'd be some issues. Was it kind of a situation, it was a bunch of guys that had money that needed a toy and they didn't understand really the business, perhaps? No, I think when you look back, there's a lot of really good people who, if you look at the Frankies in Fort Wayne, they got out. They said, okay, the Kalamazoo people, the Parfitts, a lot of money, great people. It seemed as the league just didn't have the entire interest of the league in mind. There was a lot of owners that got a lot of, put this way, that were really had a lot of say, and we outgrew the Fort Waynes and the Kalamazoos and the Flints, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I remember sitting next to David Franke at a league meeting going, this league isn't for us anymore, and I was like, geez. I mean, Fort Wayne's gone on, the franchise is still intact and doing a great job, and has managed to be in a different league, and it's still the same owners, and Bob Chase calls the games, and life is swell in Fort Wayne.
When this team, after all of this, Mr. and Mrs. Pettitt put the team in a trust, what was it like around here for the Admirals? On the ice, it was all right.
On the ice, it was fabulous. You know what? I look at those as fondly as some of the, obviously Mrs. Pettitt dying and the team being in a trust it was difficult on all of us. But really, I look at the crew of people that we had. I mean, and I look back and go, my gosh, we ran a professional sports team with a tiny little group of people. But we look the respect that we had for each other and the can-do attitude. I mean, when I look at Charlie Larson and myself, and it just buckled in, just really buckled in and just going after it. It was really interesting. John Bitter and and Phil and we were. I mean, that was it. I mean, that was your office staff, and it was really a challenge. But to put on a game and have a game ops crew and do PR and to still do some promotions and try to beg, borrow, or steal for whatever advertising we could get. It taught us all a lot. And it taught us that we can get some things done without having a lot of money, but sure helps when you have a little bit of capital to promote the team.
Well, and it's all well and good to say that you learned a lesson now, but you're all young people at the time. Why did you stay?
Passion. It really is. It is passion. It was, had really worked so hard at building this thing up and working so hard at making this, in my estimation, the best entertainment value in town. And I still believe that to this day. And, there's a certain high that you get from walking into a building when there's 8, 10, 12,000 people and the energy they get, and knowing that your ideas and sitting in a way too messy office trying to figure some things out, you had something to do with it. I mean, that's something that once you get into this business and once this gets into your blood, it's like being an old carny. You never leave. You just, when this type of thing gets in your blood, you can't ever come back down.
So when word gets around that this team is going to be bought out of the trust, what by Harris Turr, what was the thought around the office? Had you met Harris? Had you known about him or anything before all of this?
Had not. Phil had all the conversations, and it was funny because the night
was Phil the active one? Was Phil the one out sniffing around?
Well,
saying, hey?
Phil was, but also Fran Croak, and Fran did done a nice job. Trying to find potential suitors, and there was a couple potential suitors that one that came to town and left very quickly. Then there was, and then Harris came to light, and it was funny because I talked to Phil the night before, and he said, yeah, they're going to announce the sale of the team tomorrow, but I'm not going to be in charge. They're bringing in a president, and I don't know who it is. And I said, okay, well, great. So I came in the next morning, first thing, and the first person I saw when I walked in was John Greenberg wearing a suit. And I mean, I'm not all that bright, but I guess I put 2 and 2 together.
And you've known John for a while.
And I've known John. Yeah, I knew John for a while. It was just great to see him, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. And I tell you what, that first day, and knowing the business, first of all, nobody's ever guaranteed a job. Nobody's ever guaranteed anything. And right after the press conference, John came in and shook my hand and welcomed me and said, you know what, we're going to have some fun. I said, John, I know sometimes, presidents and people, sometimes you want to bring in your own people. Sometimes, you feel comfortable with a guy. You've worked with a lot of great people at the Brewers. I said, don't hesitate. If you want to, toss my fat rear end out of here and bring in somebody that you feel more comfortable with, he says, sit down, relax, we're going to have a great time. He goes, you're my guy, just don't worry about it. And from day one, it's just, to me, it's been the comfort level and the ability to bring up the stupidest ideas in the whole world and get shot down or bring up stupid ideas and say, oh, that's a great idea. And really just the comfort to be able to be more minor league and do some of the things that I dreamt of when Lloyd and Jane owned the team. I could bring an apple and a bee on the ice right now if I wanted to. But it's great. It really is.
I don't think people always look at they'll see the coach or they'll see the player. It can't be underestimated what you, the other people in the office, have done for hockey in this area. You have to take great pride being a lifelong resident and seeing in the over 30 years that you've been around this team, the growth in hockey in southeastern, and specifically southeastern Wisconsin, but the entire state for that matter. And you look at guys like Drew Stafford and the kids of these guys that played for this team that have gone on from this area to great things.
Oh, it's incredible. You know, when I started, you know, like when Phil started, I mean, they're playing hockey they had Shaw and we had Winter Club, 2 rinks that people played in this town. That was it. And, you know, and the amount of CYO breakfasts and holy name breakfasts and youth hockey clinics and speaking.
And this isn't just Milwaukee.
And speaking engagements that Phil and I went to throughout the entire 80s and 90s. I mean, I always took my hat off to Phil because there was never any time where he was coaching the team at the time, and we were all working hard. But he would coach a team. He'd come back from a road trip on a Saturday night at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd come get off a bus from Flint, and he'd go to a Holy Name breakfast over at Blessed Sacrament at 7:30 the next morning and talk to people about hockey, and then have a game that afternoon. So it's like it was difficult. I mean, you know, and we all did it. I mean, it was, you know, the average 100 speaking engagements a year went everywhere, did everything, and just to really promote the team and everything we could do to promote the team. And you know what it is? It's a labor of love, and we just enjoyed it. And yeah, we take pride in it. I mean, I've worked pretty hard to try to stay a little bit low profile because you know it's not about me. It's about the team, and it's about the entertainment, and it's about the performance of the team. This last year, when John and Harris were nice enough to do a big 30th thing for me, I was the most uncomfortable person in the entire world because you know it's not about me. But I tell you what, it's still. My mom still talks about it today and thinks it's one of the most magnificent things of her life. So for her to sit on the rink and watch her son having nice people say nice things about her son. So you know what, that's wonderful.
Well, real quick, I want to go through some of the guys that have been here. Obviously, Phil, what he has meant to this organization and what he's meant to you maybe personally.
Well, you know what, Mr. Hockey in Milwaukee, I tell you what, there wasn't, for the longest time, you couldn't say hockey in Milwaukee without thinking of Phil Whitliff. And you know what? He did more to build the sport than anybody. He was tireless to build the sport. I think he really worked hard.
Kurt Frazier.
Kurt Frazier's about as intense a guy. I always thought that Kurt Frazier was the most intense guy I've ever met in my entire life. And after games, when you watch him dissect every goal against us and tell you exactly why it was scored, and just sit there and brood about it for hours. Then I met Lane Lambert. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's got nothing. There's no question. Lane's about as intense as they come.
Kurt was interesting in the fact that he was about the only guy in those Vancouver years that it was here more than a year and a half. I mean, they went through coaches a lot, starting with Rick Lee.
Really good people. Yeah, Rick Lee was that team. That team that year was the perfect team for the opening of the building. I mean, the offensive prowess of that team was scary. How many incredibly gifted offensive players we had. You know, they take the puck. You were talking run and gun, NBA style, up and down the rink. We're going. I would venture to guess a third of the guys had no clue who was playing in goal for them that night because they never got that far back in the zone. Never ever got close. I mean, never. I mean, there were forwards. I think Paul Allis never saw the defensive zone most of that year. Gifted hockey player. A one-way contract from Hartford. Big, and he got acquired by Vancouver. And, you know, eventually the team was so offensive. Man, I remember us winning a game in Denver early in the season, like 8-6, and Rick Lee being the most unhappy person in the entire world because he was a defenseman. And you first and foremost, you have to take care of your own end. And never took care of our own end. I mean, we got in run and gun hockey games.
Who are some of the characters when you look back?
Oh,
and there has to be.
There's. Many. I mean, there's some incredible characters. Sean Antosky. You know, I mean, you know, tragically his career was cut short because he had an accident. But you know, the video that everyone sees of him going across from one penalty box to the other, that's played at the Bradley Center all the time. I mean, Darren Pang, a phenomenal character and just a great guy. I mean, the list is so long. We need, you need 3 games to fill it. But I mean, those are a couple of guys that were just really fun people to be around. Sean Antaski always wanted to sing the national anthem for a game, and I felt bad because we never were able to accomplish that for him. Because first of all, I asked the Pettitts, and they weren't happy about it. So, but that's the way it goes.
Who do you think is the most? It was the most talented player, and who was the most underrated player?
Talented player, Danny Hodgson, Michel Mongeau had crazy talent. Dan Hodgson, I think, played 30. The numbers may be off, but played like 30 games that first Vancouver year and had like 65 points or 70 points. Just was an incredible talent. I thought that underrated. I like Marc Moreau as a player. I always like Marc Moreau as a player. I thought that he brought a level of intensity that made everybody a better player. I really liked the way he played the game. He ended up getting traded off to Toronto, but was a solid player. But again, the list is probably long and distinguished, and if I gave it more time, I'd probably come up with 15 or 20 more guys. But I tell you what, one thing about hockey, guys, and you've been in this business for a while. I can count on one hand the amount of guys that were a pain in the rear end. I mean, every one of these guys, and we talk about it on our radio show, is that they're one of the 5 best ever. Because literally, there have been so few guys that you wouldn't want to have over for dinner, hang out with. I mean, hockey guys are just great guys.
2 things I want to close with. First off, that 04 championship and what that run was like. With Claude Noel, who you knew obviously before as a player, an opponent, and had been the assistant coach for quite some time here. But what that championship in 04 meant, and you alluded to it a little bit with the bare bones staff that you had at that time, but winning that bet, and what it was like driving out to Wilkes-Barre to celebrate.
Well, getting a speeding ticket, buying champagne at a couple of pharmacy and a convenience store. We're buying $1.95 champagne, and they do make pretty good $1.95 champagne, especially when you win a championship. It's more for pouring and spraying than drinking, but it all works. But yeah, that was interesting. Driving in a van full of 10 people or whatever it was to get out to Wilkes-Barre for the game 4 was a great experience. One of definitely in my top 10 experiences, other than the speeding ticket. But yeah, having getting a call from the coach saying and it's of course not to rattle the hockey guys. If we were to be fortunate enough, and if this all happens, what are we going to have for champagne? Because we quite frankly couldn't afford building prices for champagne. I mean, we're not going to pay $17 a bottle at that point because it was tough. Things were tough. So that was interesting. That was really interesting.
But you found a way.
Oh, we did, and it was fun. We had Operation Hockey Guys going on. All the champagne was in my bathtub. At the end of the second period, we had what we felt was a comfortable lead. What is it, 4-5, 5-1 at the end of 2 periods, something of that nature. And we felt good. So John Bitter and Charlie and I felt comfortable enough to go back to my room, put all the bottles of champagne into a hockey bag, and transport it into the back of the arena in Wilkes-Barre. And the security guard says, "What do you got there?" And I said, "Well," and he heard the bottles clinking. He goes, "Congratulations." And we said, "Thank you. It's not over yet, though." And then we scored, just as he said that, we scored, I think, our 6th goal. So yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a really phenomenal experience.
Okay, so you mentioned that championship experience. Tell us about the other one, sneaking things in bags in 1983 against the Toledo club.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate night. It was an unfortunate night. We had.
But mentioned in the newspapers. I mean, it unfortunately was a story.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I was with Rel Boucher and Don Burke, the reporters who covered the team in the playoffs, and we went up to the same little nook and cranny that we covered the prior games of the series, and got the, and we're sitting there getting comfortable. Guys got their things out, and the booth was probably, half the size of the booth you or I would use during games of the playoffs. And really not good for 2 guys to try to cover a sport. Owner came up and said, "Get out of here." And I said, "Sir, this is the Milwaukee media. This is where your PR guy said we're just covering the game." He goes, "Well, I have other plans. I have people I have to entertain up here tonight." Which, to entertain anybody in that area would have been just, ridiculous, because it wasn't big enough to sit 2 people comfortably, much less entertain anybody. So he turned around and punched me. In my head, the back of my head hit a big water pipe, and. So I was like, whoa, and one of these routines, right in front of the reporters. So, of course, right now they've all instantly got a story. And we played perhaps the worst game in Admiral history, losing the game 16-4. And the little hunchback, Toledo had a little hunchback guy who every time they'd go, every time they scored a goal, he'd walk onto this little platform and hit this gong. So now, I go back to the locker room because he put out a fallacy that I took the first swing and I assaulted him. So cops all over the building are looking for me, and I'm sitting in our locker room. So it comes time to leave the building, and we have a game the next day in Milwaukee, which is game 6 of the series, and we need our flight to be held up while the cops pull me off the plane and do everything else. Like we need a hole net at that point. So Johnny Flesch comes up with the great idea to put me into we had an extra stick bag, is to put me into a stick bag, lay the sticks along the bottom, lay me on top of the sticks, zip it up, stick it into the back, the bottom of the bus. The other stick bag was next to me, and I rode to the airport in the cargo, in the luggage bay, in a stick bag. It was phenomenal. I got on the plane, got back to Milwaukee, felt pretty good about the fact that okay, we got game 6 coming the next night, we should be okay, and then got beaten. The last thing I remember that night was handing the Turner Cup to the commissioner, who then handed it to the Toledo Gold Diggers and Claude Noel and Dirk Graham, who skated around our ice, which wasn't wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but you know what? It's I duly ripped on Claude enough for it over the years.
Real quick, when you mentioned characters, John Flesch has to be in the top 2 or 3 in this.
Oh no, there's no question. No, there's no question. I think maybe when I look back, and you asked me earlier about characters, there's some guys that just are off the charts so much that you kind of overlook them. Troy Gambles of the world, the John Fleshes of the world, who are just way off the charts. Greg Tebbett. There's some guys that were just really out there. And John Flesch was. John Flesch was. I remember John Flesch carrying himself up in a motorcycle accident, 24 stitches. Wasn't going to play. No, there's no way he's going to play. There's no chance he's going to play. Goes out for the warm-up. There's Johnny Flesch playing the game. Had 2 goals and an assist that night. Reporters walked in and said, "Geez, how did you do this? You just unbelievable. Stitches here, stitches, unbelievable." And reporter said, "How'd you do it?" He goes, "It really hurts going up and down stairs. I can barely do it." And Donnie Burke said, "Well, geez, how did you play that?" He goes, "Because there's no stairs in the hockey rink." So, he just had an incredible night. Johnny was that kind of guy. He just had that effect on people. But Dale Yakachuk, oh my gosh. I look at the guys in the 80s and 90s. Now, guys, you know what? I'm
way more serious.
Well, I'm not close to the team. Back then, I was PR guy, I was a sales guy, I was a marketing guy. You wore 9 hats back then. Charlie could probably tell you some fabulous stories about these guys, but back in the 80s and 90s, it was all about you did everything. You did everything, and so you got to know the guys a little bit, and then you got to find out how crazy some of them were.